Hi everybody, so the Moskva, I think I've pronounced that right. This is another one of those kits that fascinated me as a kid. Along the lines of the Privateer, the Matchbox kit. Unusual looking, odd looking, but fascinating. But nevertheless, a kit I wanted to build. So here we are. I think it was the mid-70s when I first saw this kit. And once again, as per usual, instead of building it straight from the box with no additional parts, I've added a bit more to it. I got to the stage in the build when I thought it needs something else. So there was a bit of time delay in the build while I waited for this upgrade set to show itself. Also at the last minute, taking the final photographs, it needed a base of some sort. It just looked odd on its own. So typical me, I was scratching my head, rummaging around trying to find a quick fix, a visual quick fix. So with some cheap MDF board and spending a lot of time looking for water effects or views of the top of the sea. I eventually found an image, but unfortunately it was a very low res image. And if you look carefully at the final photographs, you can see the pixels on the color printouts of the sea. I also had to change the color of the image, and I went for, after many years crossing the Solent, a very lime green color. Always showed itself when the sky was leadened, ready for a heavy storm. So, the Russians in the Solent, who knows? Right, let's get on and see what I did with this vintage kit. Great box art as usual. HMS Fearless, one of my favourites from Airfix, a kit I built many times in my youth. Luckily, all the parts are still sealed in their bags, which is always a confidence builder. Instructions? I like the way we glue the two stands early in the build. I suppose to help build the superstructure while it was sat on the table. The decals look usable, we shall see later. A look at life before the digital age took over. Oh look, a wobbly Boris Johnson. All we need now is a sausage Kia. So let's look at the parts before it gets too political. So I'm just going to give you a closer look at the two Karmov helicopters supplied. Now for the small size, we have quite a few parts here. Now I don't know what these are, but we've got the rotors and the rear tails. Now I can't vouch for accuracy here, and that goes for the rest of the kit. I'm not going down that road, I'm just going to build it. There's some very nice sharp detail here and there, pretty good for its age. We have a guide for the waterline, which is where I'm going with this build. So let's get on. I'm going to make a start by cutting the three bulkheads first, Luckily, we've got the waterline marks here to show me where to cut. Then for the main two parts. So to make these cuts, I'm just lightly scoring with a brand new blade. May take a bit longer, but it's safer. Now the stern needed a bit more effort in cutting. Thicker plastic? So the microsaw came in handy. So let's glue the two main parts along with their bulkheads. Now before these parts dry, I'm going to use the 3 upper deck parts as jigs. With the glue dried, you can see there is going to be a lot of cleanup, as well as some sink marks to fill in. So to fill these in, I've used a mixture of superglue and talc, and the Tamiya tape here is just to protect all that recessed detail from this process. So all cleaned up, and while I was here, I've also opened up the anchor points. Now one area I do want to improve are the chains on this part. I've got these to hand and hopefully they will look the part. The rear helicopter landing area had quite a few heavy sink marks. They required filling in as well. Here I've decided to open one of the helicopter bays and the other one will be closed. So I've given the surface a basic sanding, but before I go over it with a finer sanding block, I'll glue the rear part to the hull, as I know more sanding will be needed to get that flush finish with the side parts. I'll add the central upper deck part as well. So with the deck gaps filled and sanded flat, I'll make a start on removing the chain detail on this bow part. With the surface detail removed, I'm just going to dry fit this and see what issues this part is going to give me. Not bad, pretty good fit. So with the bow part glued on, I couldn't help but notice the overly large capstans. This should be a quick fix and be replaced with some plastic rod. I'm being very careful here not to cut into the deck too much. By removing these, it will also make it easier to clean up those edges to get them flush. Next, I'm going to hide all this with a sheet of plastic card. It will also give me a better flat bottom. So a basic shape is cut out and glued on. Here I'm using an old paintbrush just to apply the glue. Then all this assembly is evenly weighed down. Now this plastic sheet will show any imperfections on the parts I've cut. These of course will be filled in. So it was at this point that it dawned on me that any shipbuilder worth his salt will be adding some photo etch railings to the build. So, when in Rome? This at the time wasn't as easy to source as I first thought. I was just after railings initially. So after a search, I found a photo etch set that was specifically produced for the Airfix kit. I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe my luck. But it has to be sourced from across the Atlantic. In other words, it could take time to arrive through my letterbox, hopefully not folded up. So I'm going to get as far as I can with the build, but no doubt I will have to put this build to one side until the etch set arrives from Uncle Sam. So, I've been busy with other things, as you can see, far more interesting, but the photo etch has arrived, so let's see what this looks like in the flesh. Wow, this looks great, but very scary at the same time. It's something I wish I hadn't needed, let alone seen. So I'll put the poor old Stuka to one side and get on with this build. So I've been looking at the drawings, and the first thing I've noticed is that I will have to retro build one of the helicopter lifts. Let the fun begin. So I'm trying to trim off the detail around the edge here, and I've ended up going through to the bottom. Oh dear. How sad, never mind. My next issue is the etch part looks too big. It will need to be trimmed, or I could make the slot slightly bigger. Not by much. I've also had to cut a hole in the bottom to add the lift base back on at some point. Now I made a start on the helicopters, but I left the small parts off until the photo etch sheet had arrived to see if I was going to use them or not. Now upon looking at the etch fret, parts in the flesh, and how minuscule and fiddly they all looked, I decided to go back to the kit parts. There is no way I'm going to bend these into shape, let alone glue them into position. It's just not going to happen. And even if I added these etch parts, I could guarantee, as sure as day follows night, that I would catch them, and then it would be good night Vienna. Looking at the kit's parts, I could see the rear legs look wrong, but with a simple cut I can get them to look slightly better, just by cutting off one of the struts and filling in the hole. Not bad for its day, but I'm still a bit dubious about those finned pods at the top, or whatever they are. The etch rotors, now I'll cut these out and add them at the very end of the build. So the areas I've been dreading, the railings. I've done this off camera, as I only get one chance at this, and I need to get this right. Well, near enough. I started by tracing an outline of the relevant deck area, and then bent the fret to match the tracing. So the central tower is all done. Hopefully the paint will hide the imperfections. So the top deck is next, and here we have different styles of railings at the front compared to the rear. No illustrations on how these are to look on the kit, i.e. where they start and where they end, so I've had to go off some of the photographs of the actual ship on the internet. These ones at the top here are for the helicopter area. All need to be cut out as single pieces, unlike the bow railings which I can add in one continuous piece. So it's something to look forward to. No, honest. The bow railing has been added by taping it into position and then adding super glue in between the tape. On the mid deck I use the same method as with the tower. Once happy with the rail I've taped in position, I'll add glue between the tape. Now I need to be very careful around these railings. I've already knocked them a few times and they'll only take so much damage. So the rear deck now, and these railings can sit up or be folded at an angle. So to give me some chance of these getting a good bond to the deck, I'm going to fold the 3 lugs to provide me with a bigger area to add glue. So I've started at the centre line, marked in pencil here, at the rear, and I'll work my way around. These are asking to be knocked off. So I've decided to add a piece of plastic rod to the base to help stop my finger from grabbing the sides and risking disturbing the rails. Hopefully this should be easier to handle. The radar arrays have been built. I've replaced some of the kit parts with some vac form pieces made by using ball bearings to create the shape and then cut them down to size. Just gives me a more realistic thickness. For the etched dishes, I've gently heated them and then formed them over this grinding tool bit. So by gently heating the etch, and it doesn't take much, just till it changes colour, it becomes more malleable. Great little tip for creating compound curves on photo etch. Other areas like these antennas are just shown butted against the surface, but I wanted a stronger join and did this by adding a piece of plastic to create a lug to the side of the tower. This will give me a stronger join with that photo etch part. So the anchor chains are next, and here the fret does supply these for you, but as I said earlier, I had to hand these and I thought they would look better. But after looking at them in situ, it quickly became apparent that they were oversized and looked silly. So what to do? So I needed to replace these Del Boy chains, and after shopping around I found these. Tiddly links, and they look very nice indeed. So these chains can be added, and with a piece of metal rod threaded at the end will make the job a lot easier to apply. Now that looks so much better. Some copper wire helps me thread the chain through the hole. Now I'm only going to be showing one of the anchors dropped. So I need to get cracking with this build, and the quandary is how much of these sub-assemblies should I add to the main structure, especially as there's so much fragile stuff that can be damaged or knocked. So I've decided to add the conning tower, and the rest I'll leave off to paint. So I'm going to give all these parts a base coat of black with a hint of this, just to knock off the harshness. Now by applying this, it will hopefully give me some shadows in those recess areas when I apply the grey coat over the top of the black. For the grey coat, I've used Tamiya XF54 mixed with a lot of white and a hint of blue-grey, which gave me this. Now the mix looks a lot darker here than it actually is. The grey applied, it's now time to draw my attention to the upper deck colours. Now the colours vary on the deck depending on which Moskva I want to show. And I've decided to show Moskva 109. I think it's Leningrad. I should have checked really, shouldn't I? But it is 109 looking at the photographs. And because masking off these areas is a no-no, no way, I'm left with adding the colours by brush. So the first colour applied is Vallejo's Red Leather. This is applied as a very thin wash and will probably take several light coats. I don't want a flat even coat, I want a nice patchy coat. Next is the Vivid Green. Now I'm not too sure about getting away with a bright green at this scale, regardless of what it actually looks like in the photos. So I'm going to leave this to dry and maybe with the next coat tone it down with a few drops of khaki. Next I'm going to break up this area. I've copied the decal layout out to help me with the positions, and I've used a copy of the decal sheet to help me cut out some masks. With the masks in place, I'm going to use either one of these paints or both as a wash over the masks. Oh, that's nice. So I'm just prepping the surface with some water. I'm just making the area damp. Now this is all trial and error. No guarantees of anything. As far as the colour green, I won't know if it's worked until the wash has dried. So I'm just applying the wash around the edges of the mask. And then shortly afterwards, I'm peeling the mask off, and then I will let this dry overnight before using an old sanding sponge to blend all this in. All nice and smooth, and you can see how much paint was taken off. I also need to paint the two platforms in an off-white at some point. So hopefully the decals should bring this all together. Next I need to add some ident markings, those 109s at the side of the hull. Blinking flip, I must fill those portholes in. Something I should have done at the very beginning. So with the artwork drawn up, this will be placed over a sheet of Tamiya tape and then using the artwork to cut through to create some masks. So with the masks applied and a flat white will be used here. Several light coats will be added. Now the paint mustn't be too thin. Not too thick but not too thin, otherwise it will run under the masks. Next, the tricky bit is the waterline. Now you can see I've added the black here, but I still need to add a thin white line all the way around the hull. Now I can hear you saying, what on earth is that and what on earth is he doing? As you can see, I've been thinking a bit too much. So hopefully this contraption will help me to apply the thinly cut Tamiya tape that has been painted to the sides. So I've cheated here, but I was looking for a quick and easy fix. The thought of masking a thin straight line all the way around this shape just wasn't going to happen. This had to work. So this looks a lot sharper, a lot better than trying to mask it and add paint. Next is to add the decals to the deck. Now because they are so very old, I've given them a coat by brush of this stuff. Belts and braces. So I'm going to start at the centre of the deck and work my way around, which means starting with this one. So I'm applying Mr. Mark's setter here, which for want of a better word is glue. Applying the decal, and then I'll remove all the excess solution, making sure there's nothing left on the surface. This stuff may stain the paint. With the decals dried, I've applied a Mr. Mark softer on the top, but to be quite honest, the decals didn't need it. So these are my usual decal problem solvers, which are just as good. So I've sealed everything in with a Tamiya satin varnish. I can now apply a Flores dark dirt wash. So the wash is finished, along with a few bent photo etch parts to boot. Now I'll start adding all the faffy bits. So back to the helos, and I've decided to clip off these things. I haven't got a clue what they are, and I haven't seen them on any photographs. If you know what they are, let me know. The photo etch blades are cut out, just need to add a piece of plastic rod to space them out. I must also bear in mind to make sure that these blades are in the right orientation. So I hope you like what I've done with this old kit, which for its age is not bad and even goes together reasonably well. I want to thank you for watching, and I do hope to see you for the next build very soon. See you later.